Good afternoon to everybody present here. I am honored to introduce our speaker for this session. Alokparna Sengupta is the Managing Director for Humane Society International India. She has worked in the animal protection movement for over a decade now and has been a part of several government and scientific committees, including Indian Council for Medical Research, Coursework, Central Insecticides Board, etc. She has also been a part of several stakeholder committees meetings to bring animal-friendly policies in India. This session is to share a brief overview on animal testing and experimentation. What has been accomplished so far? What are the alternatives? What needs to be done in India specifically? And most importantly, what can we do to ensure justice for animals in our individual capacities? A quick reminder, I request all of our attendees and viewers to put their questions in the chat box, and the same will be put forth in the question and answer round. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Diksha. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me at this India for Animals conference. It was exactly 11 years ago on this day that FIAPO had held its conference at India for Animals in Chennai, I think, in 2011. And that was sort of my exposure into the big world of animal welfare. And it's amazing that I'm back on the very same day, 11 years later. So quickly sharing, okay, I'm Alokparna, like Diksha introduced, and I'm going to share a quick presentation, and please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. All right. So I'm from Humane Society International India, a not-for-profit animal protection organization which works for all animals. Now, animal experimentation. What do we understand by animal experimentation? Animal experimentation is the use of live animals for anything, for experimenting on them for the purposes of science, or so we have learned. Unlike what is believed, animal experimentation is actually not very old. In the 19th century, earlier animals used to be experimented live in public, and in the 20th century, that is in the 1900s, they were then tested, used in research and in testing in laboratories. But as long as there has been animal experimentation, there has been protests against animal experimentation. So everybody around the world, whenever they have seen animal experimentation, they have actually protested against it and said that the practices are untenable, is not scientifically viable, and results only in profit to the human race, and does not take into the fact that it's not scientifically tenable. But how has this changed over, say, a period of in the last 150 years? So one of the main things that came into picture was the principles of humane experimental technique, which is founded by Russell and Birch, which we very easily call today as the 3Rs policy. This was brought about by Russell and Birch, where the 3Rs are replacement, reduction, and refinement, something that the farm animal protection movement, in fact, has taken or adopted from the animal experimentation movement or anti-animal experimentation movement. Now, why is moving on from or moving away from animal experimentation important? Now, we are looking at something on a revolutionary basis and not evolution also. So instead of replacing part by part, we want to build something new and bring about a revolution in the way science is carried out and in the way safety is carried out for the benefit of not only animals, but also humans. In the 1800s, now let's just take an example. In the 1800s, the biggest cities like New York, London, Paris, these used to be completely flooded with horses, horse carriages, and believe it or not, the roads used to be completely filled with layers and layers of feces of horses, because where would these animals go? And what started happening was health conditions of these animals were so bad that animals started dropping dead, and then there was lesser space for people to take these carcasses of these animals. At that point, just horse carriages became such an issue. At that point, the RSPCA, which was there at that time, tried to help a lot. But more than RSPCA, it was Ford who helped by building the car. So they brought about a revolution instead of trying to replace horses one by one. Similarly, for example, if you have to go from Bombay to Delhi, or Mumbai to Delhi, or Delhi to Mumbai, earlier people would go by car, some other mode of transport. But now, even for some of us, even to think of a business trip in a train, we think it takes too much time. So there was a revolution brought about by the air transport industry, and we now use flights for our work. And that is what we want to do with animal experimentation. That is, we want to not only replace, because one of the thought processes by many of us is that we need to replace each animal in a test by another non-animal testing. And that is not how science works, and that is not how, unfortunately, animal experimentation is going to end. So right now, what we are trying to understand is what is animal experimentation? Let me just give you an overview of it, and how can we replace animal experimentation? So basically, animal experimentation are of two kinds, actually three. One is education, animals used in education. But when we go to the progresses, we'll see that in India, animals in education have actually been replaced. Then is testing, which is mandated by the government, and where the government requires you to test each and every chemical on animals before it moves on to human testing, and then before it comes into the market. So this is called regulatory testing or safety testing, or also called as toxicity testing. These requirements may range from tests which are 14-day-old tests to 2-year-old studies. So your acute toxicity, oral, skin toxicity. So a lot of the oral toxicity happens on rats and mice. Skin toxicity happens on rabbits and rats also. Inhalation, you must have seen photographs of rats being stuffed into these cylindrical plastic containers, and they are being pumped with gases, and to just check for these chemicals which may have inhalation, which may have toxicity if you inhale them. Of course, eye irritation, nobody can forget the photos that we've seen of Dre's test, where the rabbits are restrained like this through their neck, and others. Remember that these reproductive, development, carcinogenicity, these are all long-term toxicity tests. So ranging from 90 days, that is 3 months, to up to 2 years. So carcinogenicity tests, your cancer tests, actually last up to 2 years. So the government requires you to test on these things before these are whatever drugs, chemicals, any sort of products are brought into the market. Know that you might ask, what sort of chemicals are tested on animals? Till a few years back, when cosmetic testing on animals was not banned, we could have said anything and everything you see, you touch, you felt, you've put on your face or on your body, or perhaps eaten, has at one point, even now has at one point or the other been tested on animals. So the drugs that we have for cold, cough, of course, they have been tested. The cosmetics that we use have been tested at some point or the other, even if not now, many years ago, they have been tested. The paint, whichever desk you're sitting on, the paint, the varnish, everything has been tested on animals. And it is done so because of the government asking you. So, excuse me. So this is how the organizations across the world, and especially Humane Society International is working across the country, where we are asking authorities in key countries to agree to one change. And that really works in the benefit of animals and of the organizations, because when there is an agreement amongst all countries, then the change is made much, much faster. So for example, in Europe, in European Union, 2009, cosmetic testing was banned for animals. 2013, the marketing ban came in. Soon after, Israel banned animal testing for cosmetics, then India, now South Korea, Brazil, parts of Brazil, and so on. I mean, now 39 countries or 40 countries have banned animal testing for cosmetics. So similarly, so this is one part of, when we say animal testing, testing is that test which is required by the government. The next is research, which is biomedical research. And this is where the maximum of your animals are actually used up. This is fundamental research and biomedical research. These happen in the glorious research institutes that are there across the country, where the research funding body decides which are the funding priorities and publishes funding calls. So here, nobody mandates it except for the people who are responsible for funding it. So for example, if I'm a donor, or if I'm a patron of an institute and I say I want that my money goes into cancer research and I want improved animal models, then people who will respond to my call for research will work on the improved animal models. I could also say, I don't want animal models at all, and here is $1 million for you. So at that point, those people who are applying for that research will actually use human tissue and anything other than animal models to build that model for research. So scientists who are seeking to apply for this proposal actually prepare according to the funding body criteria. So that is why it is important that we educate the funding bodies. We educate, whether it's a private funding body or a public funding body, we educate them so that they change their funding criteria, because right now animal testing or animal experimentation or animal models is a tried and tested method. Nobody even wants to look at the other side. So what happens with animal use is when the scientists respond to these proposals, then animal use protocol application is done. The animal ethics committee is then, the proposals are submitted to, and then animal research studies are approved, which is a long drawn process by itself. But if you're looking at human tissue or a human-based approach, there is nothing of this sort required. So it becomes easier and much more efficient for the scientists to build on this. So again, just the definitions on what is the difference between animal testing and animal research or animal experimentation or research as such. Now, across the world, including India, and India is on the bottom of the page, if you see, we have mandatory alternatives legislations which exist, whether it's European Union, Brazil, United States, South Korea, or India. So in India, for example, Chapter 4 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act talks about animal experimentation only. So Section 17(2)(d) under Chapter 4 actually mandates that if you have, my apologies, if there are alternatives to any procedure, then animal testing or animal use must be avoided and should be avoided. So that is how the interpretation of mandatory alternatives, wherever alternatives are available, that one must use the alternatives and not depend on animals. Chapter 4 also brings about an interesting body called the CPCSEA. It's a long one. The government obviously did not make it very easy for us to use their name. It's the Committee for the Purpose of Control and Supervision of Experiments on Animals. So this committee which sits out of, now it sits out of the Ministry of Department of Animal Husbandry, Fisheries and Dairying and Fisheries. This CPCSA body is formed under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act and is a regulatory body which regulates all animal experimentation. That means whether it's you, me, or anybody who want to experiment, who want to use animals for any experimentation, have to get permission from the CPCSA. And this is very important. There's a slide. I'm sure throughout the weekend you've heard about the Animal Welfare Board of India, how it's an advisory body. The difference between Animal Welfare Board of India and CPCSA is that CPCSA has the power to approve, reject experiments. It also has the power to make regulations, unlike AWBI, which can only recommend regulations to the ministry. So here, AWBI, both AWBI and CPCSA are statutory bodies, but AWBI is an advisory body, but CPCSA is a regulatory body. Please remember that CPCSA is a powerful body which has the power to approve experiments, to also reject experiments, and bring about its own laws in the form of rules to regulate any sort of animal experimentation. So quickly moving on, just staying on to CPCSA for a little bit, is that CPCSA has two kinds of bodies. One is the main CPCSA body, which is in the central government, which looks at large animal experimentation. So if you're using dogs, monkeys, or bigger animals, then you have to apply to the large CPCSA main committee. If you're using smaller animals like rats, mice, rabbits, then every institute which experiments on animals, or every institute which even has an animal house, needs to have an institutional animal ethics committee. And these institutional animal ethics committee are then responsible for regulating these experiments. So if I'm using only rats and mice, then I can go to my institutional animal ethics committee and ask for an approval. If I'm using dogs, then I have to go to the larger central government committee, which is the CPCSA committee. Just for your knowledge, that there are so many, 39 national plus 9 state measures which are already in place, including India, where India was one of the third regions in the world to ban cosmetic testing on animals. A lot of people think that India has ended animal testing because they think in 2013, 2014, but that's not true. That's only for cosmetics that India has ended animal testing. Now, basically, this is while the campaign names are Humane Society International, Humane Society Internationals, but this is just to explain to you the different kinds of pillars that animal experimentation has. So on the left side, you'll see it's cosmetics. So cosmetics is one level. Cosmetics is at a unique position because people generally, public perception is also that one should not have to test animals for your luxury or for your beauty. So cosmetics provides a gateway for organizations, people like you and me, to go and speak to the government on this. And then you can move on to bigger, more serious, or more difficult to replace products and animal tests, which then fall into the toxicology or the animal testing, safety testing or animal testing regime that I spoke about. And then, of course, the maximum amount of testing or animal use that happens is in research. Now, you might ask me how many animals are tested per year. Now, unfortunately, like farm animals, for example, we don't have a clear count of how many animals are tested for research per year across the world. For a long time, it was 115 million animals. Now it has increased to 192 million animals, but 192 million animals are used for animal experimentation, and these numbers are only from those countries which actually publish data on the number they use. Countries like India, unfortunately, don't even consider it important to publish how many animals are used by our country, whether it's private or public, by public entities or private entities. So many countries like India do not publish data, and that's how we still don't have an accurate result or accurate number or estimation of how many animals are used. And like Richa said, I've been working in this field for 11 years now. There has still not been much progress from getting any numbers out from the Indian government, at least. So anyway, so cosmetics is a good gateway issue where you can use cosmetic and move into bigger territories, which is drugs, pesticides, other industrial chemicals, household chemicals, etc., etc. Pesticides, for example, to get one pesticide into the market, one uses at least 10,000 animals. So it's a huge consumer of animals. Then comes research, which is Hindi mein, if I have to say, it's just unginet numbers of animals. It's just unimaginable. There's no test. So for example, a PhD student can use up to 200 animals in just 2 years of its PhD. So imagine 5, 6, 10 years, how many animals they'll be using, right? And all of it encompasses education. So these are the basics of what are the verticals where you can divide or place animal experimentation into. Now, what is the critique behind animal experimentation? So it's moved on from, animals are sentient, animals should be this, animal testing is cruel. I think the entire world now knows that animal experimentation is cruel, that it should be avoided as much as possible. And in fact, the movement against animal experimentation has been there for a long time. Like I said, when animal experimentation came in, the protests also came in. But right now, the call is not only from animal advocates such as you and me, but also from the scientific industry. The biggest problem is it uses thousands of animals and takes a lot of time. For example, we are in the middle of a pandemic right now. There's so much hue and cry about how these vaccines are coming in. Are they sustainable? There was a need for these vaccines to come in within a certain period of time, yet we couldn't get it. It couldn't come fast enough because one drug, if you see the numbers here, one drug takes up to 13.5 years to come to the market. And we use at least up to $2.5 billion are used for one drug to come to the market. And of course, thousands of animals. So scientists, regulatory bodies are talking about how the failure of these models is of these drugs. So 92% of drugs actually which succeed on animals and come to humans, 92% of them fail when they come on human beings. So, and people say that this is the failure because of limited predictive value of the animal models. So we need better predictive tools. The former director of National Institute of Health in the USA, one of the biggest research institutes, had said that we have moved away. The problem is that we have moved away from studying human diseases in humans. The problem is that it hasn't worked, and it's time we stopped dancing around the problem. We need to refocus, adopt new methodologies for use in humans to understand disease biology in humans, not from animals. Which brings us to the alternatives that are there or that are being built. Like I said, there's a misconception that we have to replace one animal test with one non-animal test, and that's completely false. Of course, what sort of modern human relevant tools are there? There are these huge machines. So if you see on your left, the yellow machines are huge, high throughput, high content in vitro machines. So in these machines, what you'll see is on the right, there's a well plate. There are 9,600 well plates where you can insert chemicals and test these chemicals at one time, rather than using it on 9,600 different animals, which is so much resource intensive. Then you have organ on a chip, something that has taken the world by storm, saying, oh my God, there's liver on a chip, lung on a chip. So now the scientists have developed organs on chips, and now they're trying to develop a human body on a chip, which is nothing but a small SIM-sized chip where it will work like how the body functions, including your capillary actions or something else. So again, there is criticism that, oh, you can't replace animals completely, but look at where science has progressed, where you can define the functioning of an organ into a chip-sized technology thing. And while it is not ready there yet, there is research going on across the world, including India, on how better organ on chips could be developed, right? For example, this one. On the left, you'll see is a rabbit's eye from the Dre's test. And I would definitely encourage you to go to YouTube and watch Save Ralph, it's an award-winning short film by Humane Society International, which talks about animal testing for cosmetics. And so, on your left is the eye after an experimentation on a rabbit. And on your right is your eye on a chip. And I'm just going to play the video. I hope it plays. You're able to see a blink of an eye. That's how science has developed, that not only can the chemicals be absorbed or chemicals act as it would act in an eye, but the eye can also blink. And forgive me that I'm blinking along with it. I'm not winking at you, I'm just blinking along with it. Then, of course, apart from these technologies, then there is another thing of understanding at a molecular level what happens in your body when there is an exposure to a chemical. So, for example, gluten-free. Gluten-free is a big fad right now, but till a few years ago, gluten-free, one did not understand what gluten-free is or where it has come from, especially in India, where we've grown up on gluten, we've grown up on wheat for such a long time. It's a very good example of how changes happen in the molecular level. So, for example, a personal story is that my grandfather was gluten allergic in the last 10 to 12 years of his life. And what happened was that his body got sensitized to gluten, and after a point of time, it started reacting. So at the age of 67 or 70, his body started reacting to any wheat products or gluten products. So similarly, these things happen with chemicals also. And what we haven't understood, we've always tried to see the human body in a linear level, like what is being shown right now on the screen. But actually, our body is like this. It's crazy complicated. And that is why computational modeling is something that is important, that a human being alone cannot be you cannot be fixing by itself. So we need computational modeling and in silico modeling, which is also an answer to understanding the kind of research, hundreds of years of research that we have, whether it's on animals or on humans. We have that research with us, and it is time that we we use the computer. We've used it for social media, but we should use it for biomedical research and understand what has happened in the body. So, and one can then use these, mix and match all these technologies that is available and combine it to get a human relevant tool to replace animals in experimentation. What will happen? It is that it'll take lesser time. It'll have a more progressive approach, optimal approach. the amount that is taken, the amount of investment that is taken for drugs to come out will be lesser, amount of time will be lesser, and of course, lesser number of animals will be there used. Now, Victory, what has, is it all just sad that, oh my God, this is so complex, we can't do anything. It is up to the scientists and up to the government to fix this all. Not really, we can play a big role. So the first progress that came was in 2010, 2011, when the Ministry of Environment and Forests said that education institutions must stop testing on animals or stop experimenting on animals. And then the UGC in New Delhi brought about guidelines in 2011 itself. And then in 2014, also prohibited animal testing, animal use. So currently, along with Medical Council of India and Pharmacy Council of India, any undergraduate studies cannot be using animals. In 2013 and then 14, the cosmetic testing was banned in India. And in 2014 May, cosmetic testing was banned in India on animals. And then by November, the import of animal tested cosmetics was also banned. In 2016-17, for the first time, non-animal tests or alternatives to tests were actually included in the pesticide testing regime. And this was the first time after 40 years that they actually did it, because the pesticide animal tests were still being conducted as with tests as old as 1977. 2016, they actually got it. So there has been progress since then. India then banned the repeat animal tests. So for example, drugs that were already approved abroad were still being tested on some animals when they were brought into India. And so Dr. G.N. Singh, the drug controller of India, then banned those repeat animal tests. Thankfully, when you see Save Ralph, you will see, of course, the Dre's eye test. In 2016, the government of India prohibited Dre's eye test on rabbits also for drugs. In the vaccine area, India banned the abnormal toxicity tests for human vaccines. Abnormal toxicity tests are these sort of tests, dose tests, which say that, okay, how many animals would it take to produce an abnormal reaction in you? So what is the dose? So it's a batch test. It's really it's not a very it's an old test, does not have any scientific foundation, and then it was banned by the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. Additionally, the Indian Council of Medical Research, for example, was one of the first Indian bodies, funding bodies, to bring out a paper on the need of alternatives to animals in 2018. And then in 2019, it brought about a paper. And in the same year, they also promised to establish an alternative center. So there has been definite progress, and we can work on these progresses further by playing a role ourselves. How can you help as individuals, as up and coming animal advocates of this country? You need to equip yourselves with knowledge. That's the best way you can do that. So like I said, CPCACA. So CPCACA has two bodies. One is Institutional Animal Ethics Committee and the main body. In Institutional Animal Ethics Committee, there are two CPCACA nominees who go there. One is a scientifically aware nominee, and one is a socially aware nominee. So if you are a scientific, if you have scientific background, you can apply for being a scientific aware nominee. If you don't have any background in it, but you can apply to be a socially aware nominee, be a CPCACA nominee, play a role in the Institutional Animal Ethics Committee of your city, of your area, and be a CPCACA nominee and play a role in the regulation of animal experiments. Bring your knowledge to the Institutional Animal Ethics Committee, because scientists are very cooped up and very focused in their work. So it is important for us as socially aware people to bring about new information. If you're part of NGOs, please pay more attention to this issue. It is sad because since the past 11 years, at least in my knowledge, of the 30,000 and more Animal Welfare Board of India registered animal protection organizations, only 2 NGOs, one of which is Humane Society International India, work on animal experimentation as an issue. On the table, we need more voices. We need more people to represent animals, because the people who are opposing us, or the people who are standing up for animal experimentation, who want animal experimentation, are huge in numbers, right? So we need for more NGOs to come and talk about this issue, come and participate in this issue, write letters to the government. If you don't have the bandwidth to work on this issue as a whole, at least support the organizations who do that. As a student, you have a right to say no to animal experiments. Remember that all animal experiments up to graduate studies are prohibited. So if somebody is using it, write a letter to CPCSA. They cannot be using animals. Help in creating awareness in your institutions. HSI India, there's this organization called CPHMS, Center for Predictive Human Model Systems. We actively promote alternatives. We conduct webinars across the country, across the year. Call us, hold awareness sessions. Just like you would for campaigns to amend the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, or for farm animals, or asking someone to go vegan, write to your member of parliament, write to your ministers, write to your elected representatives, asking them where are they putting their funds. These are your tax-paid money which go into animal experiments. So whether or not you are vegan or not vegan, know that your taxes are going into these experiments. So you have a right to ask your elected representative to show how they are allocating funds. What is their idea when elections come? Ask for their manifesto. Tell them that one needs to end animal experiments. If you're a PhD student or work in research institutes, opt for a non-animal methodology. Push the institution to opt for or promote non-animal methodologies. Basically talk about it more, because while we understand that farm animals consumes the maximum number of animals, the next in line is animal experimentation, and there is no awareness on it. There is ignorance from the animal movement itself, and we are doing a great disservice to animals if we don't talk about this issue. So this is how you can help. You can reach out to me at asengupta@hsi.org, and I'll be happy to help you or talk to you about this. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. What an insightful presentation it was. I've got some questions, so we'll very quickly move with it. So the first question is from Anjali Taj. Question to ma'am. Hello, ma'am. I'm Anjali Taj. I have just completed my MSc Biotechnology from Lucknow University. I am willing to work with HSI for animal testing and farm animal protection. Can you please help me out? How can I apply for the same so I can learn more about it? Thank you so much, ma'am.
Right. Anybody who is wanting to work with us or intern or volunteer can write to us at india@hsi.org. Please write to us with a cover letter as to, just like you've asked here, that you want to work for farm animals or animal experimentation. Based on the vacancies we'll respond to you.
Right. Thank you. Then the next question is from Sarani. I'm sorry if I'm spelling it so wrong. Question to ma'am: does HSI have an educational coursework or material on animal experimentation accessible to the public?
Right now, we don't have it, but we do conduct courses on animal laws. So for example, we done an advanced diploma course along with the Animal Law Center at Nalsar University, and we run an MA course. So there we do a whole lot of detailed work and presentation on animal experimentation. In the near future, we definitely want to build a curriculum on alternatives, but that will be for scientific institutions. So right now for the public, I think these presentations is all I have, but we will be working. I mean, if you want to sign up for those courses, diploma courses or MA courses on animal law, it's a great way to get a degree in your CV and to learn about the issues on animal experiment, on all animal issues.
Right, thank you. Then the next question is from Dimple. Question for Ms. Alokparna. What are your thoughts about xenotransplant, about the recent pig to human heart transplant?
Yeah, I don't know much to have an opinion on this, except that I think it's unfortunate that we are still using pig organs to do this. But considering that the first one was done first, I mean, it has been experimented on, or it has been done a trial of for decades, if not longer. So I hope that in the near future, the problem is that the media also plays a role, right? This has been done, so it's all gotten blown up into the media. But a lot of the other stuff, other non-animal testing stuff that is being done is not getting blown up in the media. And that's why the media interaction and media awareness also needs to be very important. It needs to be done. So I think it's sad because an animal had to lose its life. But apart from that, I don't know much about it or the science behind it. So I would not like to comment here.
Right, thank you. Then the next question is from Savita. This is Savita Kulkarni, working as a teacher in Army Public School, Khadakwasla, Pune. Recently, I have seen a program about the ear piercing and attaching electronic gadget to the animals like cow to keep track of their health conditions, pregnancy, etc. My question is, how much is this safe in context of long-term health of animals?
See, if it is the RFID, ID, then it should not be. Affecting in the long term. In fact, it is a good practice to be done by the animal husbandry department, so that there is a full end-to-end spectrum of ensuring that this is the animal, and there is identification of the animal. So ear piercing, it is only the tracking of the RFID. It is not a problem at all, and you can't name that animal experimentation here actually.
All right. Talking about the accountability of animals. So, hearing the alarming numbers of animals used in the animal experimentation side of the whole business, from where do these actually animals come from?
So these animals are bred in captivity, and in fact, I mean, of course, in captivity, long time back. And unfortunately, during the COVID also, there were monkeys which were procured from the wild because some institutions needed to test on monkeys. But like I said, CPCSA actually, so for any institution to be doing experiments on animals, they have to be registered with the CPCSA. Similarly, any institution which breeds animals also has to be registered with the CPCSA. So there are different companies who breed animals to, again, supply them to various institutions to this thing. So you have, institutions which breed dogs, beagle dogs, who are used because of their size and their temperament. They don't protest so much. That's why they're used as experimentation animals. You have your rats, mice, rabbits who are bred in institutions who are allowed specifically to breed these animals for experiment. So they are procured from within these registered institutions and not procured elsewhere from the wild.
So by giving a registration certificate or some license to these breeding companies and breeding institutions, shouldn't this be the first step in the whole process to stop that we do not supply such animals in order for them to have a demand? Shouldn't this kind of, talking towards the legal sensitivity of this issue, what do we think about this?
The thing is, you cannot be, it's like this, you have to close the tap and you cannot be emptying the bucket or empty, so it has to be a science focused and human relevant based approach, because if we don't go with a focus on science, we are then making a temporary solution. So if we attack or if we go to these breeding institutions, there will be hue and cry saying that, oh, these animal advocates are coming and closing us down. But on what basis are we closing it down? Is the science still not there? Are there no more, are there other experiments or other technologies available? If there are not, then they will have an easier way out to oppose us. So we have to use the modern technology that is available to counter this. And as soon as these modern technologies are adopted by the scientists and by the government, you will see these laboratories and breeders and everything going down by themselves, because otherwise it will be a half-hearted and an incomplete approach.
Right. So let us, while going about this, let us talk about the economic changes and economic implications these things have towards suppose in the cosmetics industry, when they experiment on rabbits and everything. And if they do not, they use other products which do not need experimentation, or they themselves choose to be an animal or cruelty-free brand and do not examine the animals upon the animals. How effective is it on them? In economical sense, does it make it more expensive? Does it make it more reliable? What exactly happens in economic sense to it?
So we've seen a research from, say, Europe, when Europe banned animal testing for cosmetics back in 2009. And then they had a 5-year gap or a 4-year gap, where after which in 2013, then they said that they would ban the sale and import of animal tested cosmetics. So at that point, what happened was they did not see any difference. In fact, the ban created an impetus for the industry to promote more non-animal testing and to do more research on non-animal tests. So we are hoping that in India also, India, we haven't seen much of a protest, and that's the good thing about the scientific industry. So whether it was with pesticides or with the cosmetic industry, pesticide industry, in fact, was with us. It took us more time to convince the government that we had more alternatives. Because again, like I said in the first few slides, that because of these multinational companies, they know that for them, if Europe they're not testing, for India they're testing, for China they're testing, but for Brazil they're not testing, it becomes an expensive thing for them. So if everybody has the same regime, it becomes so easy for them. So I'm not going to pick out cosmetics, but people are saying, oh, organ on a chip or something, it'll be so expensive. The investment is quite large, but so is animal experimentation. So for example, to get out a drug, one drug costs you $2.5 billion and 14 years almost. So the investment of non-animal technologies is also might be high in the beginning, but in the long run, it's much more effective, much more efficient, and much more time relevant. It's not resource intensive. So for any new revolution or any new something to take place, new thing to take technology to come, you have to invest in it. And what better than to see the startup industry, right? You're investing in it, but the returns on investment is huge. And this is what it is going to be for alternatives too.
Right. Also, you spoke about COVID situation when the vaccinations had to come out and animal testing was not possible. And in several cases, we have heard that first animal testing happens, then human testing happens, and then the drug comes out, right? So now, then we also heard that Covishield was not done, was not animal tested, and things like that. How the things which come into the social media, how real are they? Because as you were saying, that repeat animal testing is stopped, not actual animal testing. Initially there is a ban on it in the first place in India, but then it is legal in China. So how is companies like Pfizer or those companies which are bringing the vaccine, how are they affecting India in this manner?
So vaccines may, of course, animal testing is, like I said, the ban on animal testing was only for cosmetics. People thought everything was banned. That's not true. So even in vaccines, you have abnormal toxicity testing, one sort of tests which is removed. Not all tests are removed. So no, I mean, even in vaccines, even the COVID vaccines, they were tested on animals. They were tested quickly, and probably the human trials were much lesser, or patients were used, and that's how everything was done in a hurry and then approved. Unlike what if you were using faster, more efficient non-animal technologies, it probably would have come in its own time, probably within that year, but that would have been its normal time. Right now, emergency approval had to be given. I'm not saying they did not test. In fact, they tested on animals. They did test on animals, but they tested the durations were shorter, the number of doses were shorter or smaller, and that's why they did it in a hurry. What I was trying to say is that all these animal experiments take a lot of time. That's why they had to innovate, and I wouldn't say innovate, but they had to change their testing regimes and bring this up.
They had to speedify it.
Yeah. So, but if we were already in that phase where we were only using non-animal tests, probably we wouldn't have to be in such a hurry, and it would have been in place much quicker
and more efficient. It would have
Correct.
been.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So last question, which I will ask to you, because we are running short of time and there are a lot of questions I also have personally. Because it's such a rare topic which people in India do not talk about, animal experimentation. So one quick explanation about what exactly are animal models, which you had told about in the research department when people use it for research. So there are animal models for which they do it for the funding. What exactly are they?
So, for example, and I should have actually cleared this out because I had only 20 minutes, I was hurrying up. So any sort of animals which are used are actually called animal models. So for example, it's a model, experimentational model, basically. So when you're saying, in the research category, when I was talking about it, animal models are like, okay, I want to get a therapeutic, I want to do research on breast cancer. So, and I want a good animal model. So whether it's a rat or a mice or a dog or a monkey, what is that animal model? So what is that animal species that can be used to make it perfect? So that is what I meant. That is what you mean by a model. So whether it can be any animal, but basically models are nothing but the appropriate platforms to be used for that sort of research.
So it's not compulsory that everywhere a rabbit will be used or a mouse will be used, or mice.
Not in research, at least. Yeah.
So it depends upon what kind of research the person is doing, upon which. So, for example, in neurobiology researchers, they use monkeys because they consider it to be the more efficient and more closer species to humans.
Correct.
That is the basic idea towards the animal model.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you so much, ma'am. I had a wonderful session with you. We all enjoyed it too much. And I wish we could continue this conversation further, and maybe someday we do. But I thank for the great support by the audience and by obviously Fiapio and you. Thank you so much and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.